everyone, this is Ma'am Yan, your instructor in Intermediate Accounting 2. For this video, I'm going to discuss the practice problems for land and building. Well, actually, this is already my second take of this video. Unfortunately, in my first take, I did not realize that the mic was muted for the entire 47-minute video. That's why the solutions are already presented and I felt it very burdensome to do it again, so I'm just gonna explain how I did this. Now, are you ready? Let's start. The first problem is Airborne Company. So the questions are, what is the cost of the land? And using the same problem, what is the cost of the building? Airborne Company acquired land and building for 5,500,000 cash at the beginning of the current year. The land was fairly valued at 2,400,000 and the building at 3,600,000. Unpaid property taxes assumed by Airborne Company amounted to 250,000. The entity also incurred building renovation of 500,000, option of 50,000 on land and building not acquired, cost of survey 30,000, escrow fee of 100,000, and real estate commission of 200,000 pesos. So how much is the cost of the land and the building? So the first thing to do is to label, okay? So you put there land and building, and then you list down all the costs that was mentioned, and then you assign it either to the land and to the building. So class, what I did here is that since as to the cost here, there are actually costs that pertains only to the land alone, and there are costs that pertains only to the building alone, but there are also costs that pertains to both land and building. Now, for those costs that pertain separately to land and building, there is no problem. But for the cost that pertains to both land and building, we still have to allocate it. So the first cost here that was presented is the purchase price of 5,500,000. Now, since this 5,500,000 pertains to both the land and building, so we still have to allocate it based on their fair value. Now, according to the problem, the fair value is 2,400,000 and 3,600,000 for the land and building respectively. That's why, through that fair value, we are able to get this fraction 24/60 and 36/60. Now, class, aside from the purchase price, we also have the property taxes. Now, take note that these unpaid property taxes pertains to the unpaid property taxes of the seller, which was assumed by the buyer up to the date of acquisition. Now, since this unpaid property taxes is related to the purchase of the land and building, therefore, it relates to both and we still have to allocate it. Next is we have the building renovation. Of course, for that building renovation, there is no problem. It is clear that it is for the building. The entity also incurred building renovation option of 50,000. Okay, so take note of this option, that this option was paid to the land and building which was not acquired. This means that it does not pertain to this land and building, but some other land and building which the company once thought of buying, but they did not acquire it. So what would be the treatment of this option? For the option that was paid for the property that was not acquired, it must be expense outright. Okay? And for the cost of survey, so when we say cost of survey, that is for the land. Escrow fee. Escrow fee, class, is also related to the purchase. Okay, so it must be allocated to both. And real estate commission is 200,000. That is still related to the purchase, so it must be allocated. So the total cost to be allocated is 6,050,000. So we just have to multiply this one based on the fraction of the land and building. So here we have the allocated cost for the land, that is 6,050,000 times 24/60. So we got 2,420,000. For the building, that is 6,050,000 times 36/60. So we get 3,630,000. In total, we have for the land, the total capitalized cost is 2,450,000 and that is letter A. And for the building, that is 4,130,000 and that is letter A also. Okay, so that is for Airborne Company. Now let's proceed to letter B, Dauntless Company. The question is, what amount should be reported for land and building applying the PIC interpretation. So during the current year, Dauntless Company had the following transactions pertaining to the new office building. Purchase price of the land 600,000, legal fees 20, architect fee 80, demolition 50, sale of scrap 30, construction cost 3,500,000. So how much is the cost of the land and building? So first we have the purchase price. So take note that under the PIC interpretation, the purchase price of the land that was purchased in which there is a building attached to it, so it will depend whether that old building is usable or not. Because if that old building is usable, then this 600,000 will be allocated to the land and that old building. However, if that building is already unusable, then all the purchase price will go to the land. Now, in this problem, as you can see, there is nothing stated if how much is the value of that old building. Now, since there is nothing stated, then we have to put or we have to account the 600,000, the whole purchase price only for the land. Okay? So, why for the land? Because in the first place, there is no given amount for the old building. So, it is as if that there is no value for that building at all. So, you put it under the land. Next, legal fees for contract to purchase land. So, it relates to the land. So, we have 20,000 pesos under the land. Architect fee, of course, that is for the building. Demolition of old building site, that is for the building. So, take note that under the PIC interpretation, the demolition cost of the old building on site would either be accounted for as land or accounted for as building depending on the purpose. Because if the purpose of the demolition is to prepare the land for its intended use, then you account it under the land. But if the purpose is to make room for the construction of a new building, then you account it under the building. Now, in this problem, the purpose is actually not stated, but it is clear that it is for the construction of the new building. Why? Because you will not demolish it if you will not construct this new building. And it is clear in this problem that there was a building constructed. And so therefore, we assume that the demolition is for the construction of the new building. So we have 50,000 pesos under the building. Next, we have sale of scrap from old building and the proceeds retained by the building contractor. Now, take note that in this case that the proceeds was retained by the building contractor. So, we did not receive anything from it. So, therefore, we should not deduct it anymore. Okay? No deduction anymore because we did not receive it anyway. Okay? It was retained by the building contractor. And construction cost of the new building, that is 3,500,000. Of course, that is under the building. So, the total cost for the land is now 620,000. And for the building, that's 3,630,000. And we have letter B as our answer. Next, let's proceed to the next problem. So we have the Newman Company. The question is, what amount should be recorded as cost of land and building respectively? At the beginning of the year, Newman Company purchased a parcel of land as a factory site for 1,000,000 pesos. An old building on the property was demolished and construction began on a new building which was completed at year end. So we have the demolition cost, the architect fee, the legal fee for title investigation, the construction cost, and the salvage materials. So how much is for the land and for the building? So firstly, we have to consider the purchase price. The purchase price here is 1,000,000. And take note that there is also, again, an old building. Okay? There is an old building. So what is the rule? Firstly, we have to allocate the purchase price of 1,000,000 to both the land and the old building. But since again in this problem, there is no fair value given, so you give the 1,000,000 to the land only. Okay? Next is the demolition of old building. Again, here, the demolition of old building or the cost of the demolition will be accounted either under the land or building depending on the purpose. Now, in this case, An old building was demolished and construction began on the new building which was completed at year end. So it is clear in this problem that there was demolition and there was construction, so therefore the demolition is for the construction of the building, so we account it under the building. Next, the architect fee. So for the architect fee, of course, that is for the building. The legal fee for title investigation, that is for the land. Okay, because this relates to the purchase. So that is for the land. Then for the construction cost, of course, that is for the building. And for the salvage materials resulting from demolition, take note again under the PIC interpretation, as to what account did you account the demolition cost, it is also where you should deduct the salvage material. So, since we accounted for the demolition cost as part of the building, and so we also deduct the salvage materials from the building. Okay? Unlike the previous problem, that the salvage materials was retained by the building contractor. So that's why we did not deduct it anymore. So here there is nothing stated, so we have to deduct it in the building, since we also added the demolition cost from the building. Okay? So for the total cost, we have the land of 1,025,000 and building of 1,675,000, and that is letter A. Next, let's proceed to the next problem. We have Matini Company. So by the way, class, if you have questions for each problem, then do not hesitate to comment it down below and I will respond to it. Okay, so we have Matini Company. The question is, what is the cost of the land and what is the cost of the building? Now, Matini Company purchased land as a factory site for 2,400,000. The entity paid 240,000 to tear down a building on the land. Salvage was sold for 20,000. Legal fee of 15,000 was paid for title investigation and making the purchase. Architect fee was 125,000. Title insurance was 10,000 and liability insurance during construction was 25,000. Excavation 40,000. Contractor was paid 8,800,000. Special assessment made by the city 30,000. Interest incurred during construction 300,000 and the entity installed lighting and signage 50,000 pesos. Now, how much is the land and how much is the building? We start first with the purchase price. So, the purchase price is 2,400,000. Okay? 2,400,000. So, it is for the purchase of the land. So, we give it to the land. Okay? Now, the entity paid 240,000 to tear down a building on the land. So, again, there is an old building on that land. And the company incurred 240 in order to tear it down, or in other words, in order to demolish it. For what purpose? Now, since in this problem, we purchased the land as a factory site in order to construct a factory, and so therefore, the demolition cost must be accounted for under the building. Okay? There is already a salvage sold from that demolition of 20,000, so we also have to deduct it from the building. Now, the legal fee of 15,000 was paid for the title investigation and making the purchase. It relates to the purchase, so it is under the land, 15,000. Then we have architect fee, building 125. So, we also have the title insurance. For the title insurance, it relates to the purchase of the land. But for the liability insurance during construction, it relates to the construction, so it is under the building. So, class, take note that not all insurances are to be accounted for as cost of the building. Okay? When do we account or when do we capitalize the insurance as cost of the building? That is only when that insurance is incurred during construction. Okay, again, that is only when that insurance is incurred during construction. If the construction is already completed and the entity incurred an insurance still, then you expense it outright and do not anymore capitalize it as cost of the building. Okay, because we will only capitalize it only up to the date of construction, up to the date when the construction is completed, and beyond that, expense outright na ang insurance. Okay, next we have excavation. That relates to the construction, so we have 40,000. The contractor was paid 8,800,000. That is for the building. Special assessment made by the city for the pavement was 30. Again, this relates to the land as we have discussed previously. Interest incurred during construction was 300,000. So we have also discussed this one, that when you make a loan specifically for the construction of a property, then any interest incurred must be capitalized as cost of the building. So we have 300,000 pesos. And the entity installed lighting and signage at a cost of 50,000 pesos. Take note that this is a land improvement unless if it is part of the plan or if it is part of the blueprint, then you account it under the building. Okay, but if it is not part of the blueprint, then land improvement. Okay, if the problem is silent, that is land improvement. So therefore, the cost of the land is 2,455,000, that is letter A, and for the building, that is 9,510,000, that is also letter A. Okay, so let's proceed to the next problem. So we have enchantment company. Hello, I'm sorry. It was muted again, so I'm going to discuss again the enchantment company. Okay. So for enchantment company, the question is how much is the cost of the land and how much is the cost of the building? So for the cash paid for land and dilapidated building, 1 million, it goes to the land because the dilapidated building or the fair value of the dilapidated building was not mentioned. Okay, so you give it all to the land. Next, removal of all buildings. So what is the purpose? As you can see, there is a new building constructed. So it is assumed that the purpose of this one is to make room for the construction of the new building, so under the building. Payment to tenants for vacating old building. So what is the purpose? Why did we let the tenants vacate? That is because we have to construct a new building, so we put it under the building. Because of the reason for letting these tenants vacate is to prepare the land for its intended use, then it will be under the land. But in this case, there is a building constructed, so it will be under the building. Next, for the architect fee, of course, that is for the building. The building permit, that is again for the building. For the title search, this relates to the purchase of the land, so that is under the land. Survey. Survey before construction of new building. When we say survey, that is related to the land. Excavation before new construction. Excavation is related to the construction, so that is under the building. New building constructed, of course, that is under the building. Assessment by city for drainage project. So when we say assessment, this is the taxes paid because of the increase of the fair value of the land due to the improvement made by the city, so that is under the land. Grading, leveling, and landfill, these are actually improvements for the land, so that is under the land. Driveways and walks to building from street, which is part of the building plan. So let's take note that in the case of driveways and walks, these are actually or generally land improvements. But if that is part of the blueprint or if that is part of the building plan, so that is when you account it as cost of the building. Okay? In this case, it is part of the building plan and it is specifically stated. So, we put it under the building. Temporary quarters for construction crew, that relates to construction, so under the building. Temporary building to house tools and materials, under the building still, related to the construction. Cost of changes during construction to make new building more efficient, still related to the construction, that is under the building. But lastly, we have the cost of windows broken by vandals. This is actually an accident and it is not related to the construction of the building. And so therefore, it being an accident, then it will now become part of the loss. Okay? Part of loss, which is expense outright. So the cost of the land is 1,080,000 and the cost of the building is 6,625,000. Okay? So that's for enchantment company. Now let's proceed to generic company. Okay, for generic company, the questions are, what is the cost of the land? What is the cost of the office building? And what is the cost of the factory building? Generic company purchased land for 2 million as a plant site. There was a small office building on the land with fair value of 700,000, which the entity will continue to use with some modification and renovation. Now, class, take note. So, in this time, class, the land with a building purchased was for 2 million. And here, there is already a stated fair value of that office building. So, this time, we now have to assign the fair value of that old building to the office building account. Now, out of the 2 million, since 700,000 pertains to the small office building on the land, then we account the 700,000 under that office building. And for the difference, 2 million minus 700,000, then the 1,300,000 to the land. Okay? Now next, the entity decided to construct a factory building and incur the following costs. First, the materials and supplies. Okay, so the entity decided to construct a factory. So we also have a factory building aside from the office building. And here are the costs incurred for that factory. So first, we have materials and supplies. So that is under the factory. Excavation related to the construction, that is under the factory. Labor on construction, still under the factory. Cost of remodeling old office building. So here it is stated that the remodeling is for the old office building, so that is under the office building. Imputed interest on corporation's own money used during construction. So class, take note that imputed interest are not actual interest, no? These are just implied interest that is only for decision-making purposes. So it is just like they have computed or they estimated the interest, assuming that the money was loaned instead of using your own money. So assuming that they loaned the money, then they will incur the 50,000. But this interest was not actually incurred. It is just imputed or implied. So intermediate accounting do not account for such. Okay? We do not account for interests that are not actual. Okay? These are only implied and for decision-making purposes. So, not to be accounted for at all. Next, we have cash discount on materials purchased, of course, whether taken or not. This is to be deducted under the factory building. Supervision by management during construction. So, supervision by management, it's like an indirect labor, diba? Factory overhead. So, that is under the factory building. Compensation insurance premiums for workers. So, again, you account for as cost of the building, the insurance that was incurred during construction. So, in this case, this is for the workers during construction. So, that is under the factory building. But here, payment of claim for injuries not covered by insurance. So, take note, if the company paid insurance for the workers, then you account it as cost of that building. But if you did not insure them, and because of not getting an insurance, somebody was injured and the entity was obliged to pay for that injuries, then it will not anymore be accounted for as part of the building. Okay? Not anymore. Instead, this will be expense outright because this is not covered by insurance. Okay, next. Clerical and other expenses during construction, that is under the building. Paving of streets and sidewalks. This is a land improvement. Okay? Land improvement. Plans and specifications, this relates to the construction of the building. And legal cause of injury claim, this relates to the payment of claim for injuries not covered by insurance, still that will be expense outright. And lastly, saving on construction. So this is actually not a cost but a savings. And it is not to be added nor deducted because this is only just an implied, again, like an implied saving that they actually save because of constructing the building instead of purchasing a new building. So they had savings, but it is not to be accounted for in intermediate accounting. So, how much is for the land? That is 1,310,000. For the building, that is 900,000. And for the factory, that is 6 million pesos. Okay? So again, if you have questions, you may just comment it down below. Next, let's proceed to Hailstorm Company. So the question is, what is the cost of the land? What is the cost of the building? And what is the cost of the land improvement? Hailstorm Company commenced operations at the beginning of the current year. The entity incurred the following costs during the year. Okay, first, payment for land. That is under the land, 1 million. Taxes in arrears on land. So class, taxes in arrears, in other words, these are also unpaid taxes. Okay, so again, when we say unpaid taxes or taxes in arrears, up to the date of acquisition, that is to be accounted for as cost of the land. Then we have architect fee under the building. Payment to City Hall for approval of building construction under the building. Contract price, of course, under the building. Safety fence around construction site, that is for the building. Safety inspection on new building, that is for the building. Removal of safety fence after completion of new building. So take note, both the construction and the removal of the safety fence is to be accounted for as cost of the building because it is necessary for the construction of the building. New permanent fence surrounding the new building. Now take note that in this case, this is already a permanent fence. So, pag permanent na, not anymore the safety fence used for construction, but for permanent purposes, then that is already a land improvement. Okay? And also the driveways, parking bays, and safety lighting, that is a land improvement. So, we have the land, 1,050,000, letter D. We have the building, 5,435,000, letter C. And we have the land improvement, 630,000, letter C. Okay? Now, let's proceed to the next problem. Okay, so we have Sandstorm Company. The questions are, what is the cost of the land and what is the cost of the building? Now, Sandstorm Company was organized in June 2014. The entity provided the following information related to the land and building account. Okay, first, organization fees paid to the state. So what is this? This is actually the fees paid for the organization of the company. It is not even related to the purchase of the land, nor it is related to the construction of the building. So therefore, this must be expense outright. Okay, the 150,000. Next, land and old building. Okay, so the land with an old building attached to it was purchased for 3 million. But take note that in the first bullet, the usable old building acquired on June 30, 2014 was fairly valued at 500,000. So therefore, out of the 3 million, the 500,000 pertains to the old building, and so for the land, that would now only be 2,500,000, which is 3 million minus 500,000. So for the land, 2,500,000 remains. Then next, we have corporate organization cost. So again, this is a cost for the organization of the corporation, not related to the purchase of the land, not related to the construction of the building. And so this must be expense outright. Next, title clearance fee, that is relating to the purchase of the land, 50,000. Cost of raising the old building since okay, so for the cost of raising, it is stated here in bullet number 2 that the entity paid 100,000 for the demolition of the old building to make room for the construction of new building. So take note of the reason for the construction of new building. So that would be under the building. Okay? Next, salaries of executives. So for the executives, in bullet number 3, the executives did not participate in the construction. And so, this must be expense outright. Okay? Not to be accounted for as capitalized cost of the building. Okay. Next, we have real estate tax. Okay. So, class, again, pag real estate tax, we only account it as part of the cost of the land if that is, that pertains to the real estate taxes up to the date of acquisition. Okay? Beyond that date is already to be expense outright. Now take note, when did we acquire the land and old building? We acquired it on June 30, 2014. Now, if you read this bullet, the real estate tax was for the 6-month period ended December 31, 2014 and was assessed on the land. So what is that 6-month period ended? So meaning starting from July 1 to December 31, 2014. When did we buy the land? June 30, 2014. So therefore, this real estate tax, which pertains to July 1 to December 31, 2014, is already a real estate tax paid or incurred beyond the date of acquisition. And so therefore, this must be expense outright. Okay? And lastly, we have the cost of the new building completed, that is under the building, 8 million pesos. So for the land, we have 2,550,000, that is letter B. And for the building, we have 8,100,000, that is letter B. Okay? That's for Sandstorm Company. Now, let's proceed to the next. We have Hyperbole Company, and the questions are, what is the cost of the land and what is the cost of the building? So, July 1 of the current year, Hyperbole Company acquired land with fair value of 1,500,000 and building with fair value of 4,500,000. So, here it is stated if how much is the fair values of each land and building. Now, the entity issued 50,000 shares with 100 par value in exchange for the land and building, and the share is quoted at 150 on July 31. So, class, this is an acquisition of land and building through the issuance of share. Now, take note of the rule when issuing shares to acquire land and building. The rule is first priority. We have to measure it at its fair value. Second priority, the first priority is to measure it at the fair value of the property. Second priority, to measure it at the fair value of the shares. And last priority, to measure it at the par value of the shares. Now, in this case, is the first priority given? Of course, yes. We have here the fair value of the 1,500,000 and 4,500,000 for the land and building. So, we do not use the fair value of the shares anymore because the first priority is already given. And so, therefore, the land and building must be accounted for at its fair value. Okay? And then next, the entity expended the following amounts between July 1 and December 31. So first, we have repairs to building. So class, ordinary repairs are just to be expensed outright. Remember, in your basic accounting, when you make your income statement, you have there the account title, repairs and maintenance under the expense. So it must be expensed outright. Okay, except if this repairs was incurred like before the occupancy of the building or repairs for the renovation of the building, so in that case it will be accounted for as cost of the building. But for this problem, this is just an ordinary repair, so it must be expensed outright. Next, we have driveway and parking lot. This is a land improvement. And lastly, remodeling of office space building and building including new partitions. This is renovation and so part of the cost of the building. And so, the total cost of the land is just the 1,500,000 and for the building that is 4,800,000. Okay? And we go to the last problem. We have the Ignoble Company. The questions are what is the cost of the land and what is the cost of the building. The Ignoble Company reported the following PPE at year end. Okay, so class, take note that what is listed here is the amount which the company reported. And so therefore, it is not necessary that all these amounts are correct. Okay, you are the one to identify what is the correct amount. Now, acquire the land and building of another entity that's for 8,400,000. Repairs made to building prior to occupancy, that is 200,000. Special tax assessment, that is 30,000. Remodeling of office space in building, including new partitions and walls, that is 400,000. The assets acquired had the following fair value. We have 3 million and 4 million. Now, in exchange for the land and building acquired, the entity issued 40,000 shares with 100 par value and 210 market value. Okay, so first, we record the acquisition cost. So class, take note. In this case again, this is an acquisition of PPE through the issuance of shares. So what is the measurement? First, fair value of the property. Second priority, fair value of the shares. And third priority, par value of the shares. In this problem, there is a fair value given, diba? That is 3 million and 4 million. But if you're going to add the 3 million and 4 million, the result would be 7 million. So therefore, the company was wrong for recording it at 8,400,000. So that should only be 7 million pesos. Now, where did they get this 8,400,000? As you can see that the shares issued was 40,000, diba? And there is a given par value and market value. If you're going to multiply the 40,000 shares multiplied by the market value, it will result to 8,400,000. Therefore, the company did base their measurement based on the market value of the shares, where in fact, it must be at the fair value of the property acquired. Okay? So the correct rule must follow, and so therefore for the land and building, that is 3 million and 4 million respectively. Next, we have repairs made to building prior to occupancy. So take note this time, this is not anymore an ordinary repair, because this repair is used in order to prepare the building for its intended use, in order to bring the building to its present condition. So therefore, the 200,000 must be accounted for as cost of the building. Okay? Then for the special tax assessment, of course, that is for the land. And for the remodeling, in other words, the renovation, that is for the building. So for the total cost, we have for the land 3,030,000, and for the building, that is 4,600,000. And that ends the discussion of this problem. Okay? I hope that you did understood the explanation. So, that will be all for this video. Now, if you have questions or confusions, just comment down below and I'll gladly respond to it. Now, thank you guys for watching and see you in my next lecture video. Goodbye!